It's like when the director says, "That was perfect. Let's do it again." For rehearsal. So, all right. Well, hello and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And today on the show, we've got two very special guests with us, Matt and Libby Zambrano. How's it going, guys?
Hey, happy to be here.
Hello. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Hopefully it sticks. We've had a little in and out with our tech here, but so you'll be here for the first part of the show, and in a minute we'll get to what you have been up to, and then later in the episode I'll share a conversation I had with some of the team behind Third Side Theater's new show, The Princess and the Goblin, which is I think starting maybe today or tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely coming up soon. It's a kind of a whimsical fairy tale story that's being done over at the People's Building in Aurora, directed by Aaron Vega, who normally does a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff for that building. So
Right.
it'll be very cool to see his work played out on stage and that world premiere brought to life.
Yeah, it does. It sounds really cool. So I'm going to try and get out and see that.
Definitely. But we'll hear more of that conversation a little bit later in the episode. But first, let's turn to what we have seen on stage since we last recorded. I know that I saw you both, Matt and Libby, over at the Mousetrap at the Arvada Center. So let's begin our conversation there, since I know everybody on this podcast recording session has seen that show.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought that Lynn Collins did a fantastic job of discovering the comedy within the mystery and the mystery within the comedy, and sort of honoring both of those worlds. And I thought it was incredibly well performed.
It was.
Agreed. I had such a great time. Yeah. So proud to be a part of the Arvada Center and be there for that special night.
Yeah. What was your take, Toni?
Well, it was my first time seeing the Mousetrap, as I was finding, I was talking with a lot of folks in the lobby, theater folks even, Jeff Newman, playwright. We were chatting in the lobby a little bit before the show, and we were both just like, yeah, we've never seen this play before. I know it's a war horse. I know it gets done all the time, but that doesn't mean that there aren't new audience members who haven't seen it. And I was finding a lot of new people along the way. So I was definitely trying to piece together the mystery. It was super fun to watch this colorful cast of characters. I definitely see a lot of inspirations for things like Clue and like Knives Out in this show. Now seeing this play and seeing the story, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get all of these other references are unlocked for me.
Play that goes wrong, of course.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. And I gotta say, I did not guess the murderer at all. I won't give any spoilers away here on the podcast, since that is the reason to see it. And it's even though it's the longest running show in the world, they still try to keep that secret, which I think is really fun and magical. So I will not spoil, but I didn't guess it.
Yeah. I would, I'm pretty sure I've seen it, but it was such a long time ago that of course I knew the basics, but yeah, great. So we had Annie Barber, Jacob Dresch was playing the character who was probably had the most funny added to his character by the director. And really more than I thought that the script had in it.
That role in particular. Yeah, I think that...
Suppose that's what you get when you cast a clown.
Exactly, yeah. So when you have somebody with the comic chops like Jacob Dresch. And I think that role might function as a little bit of a red herring, you put him out there to sort of like get the audience thinking, okay, well, this is obviously one of the first characters you meet, like this has to be it. But then you meet several other characters who all then sort of start to play in as well. And it really does become a game of guessing from the audience point of view.
Yeah. And also Gareth Sachs, who is one of the favorite people to see on stage, as Major Metcalf was great. And Rodney Lascano as Mr. Parcini. So, a lot of fun stuff. I have to say that when I was seeing it, I didn't find myself like on the edge of my seat like I thought that play was. It's a little bit of a slow burn in places, so it's not like a real action thriller like Wait Before Dark or something like that.
I would agree with that. I found myself sitting much more comfortably in the comedy of the production, and so therefore it kept me sort of distracted from the actual scariness of the situation, that like, oh, I don't know who's going to be killed off next. But then it made, those murders to be that much more exciting when they did happen.
Yeah. And of course, great production values. I mean, we talked to Brian Malgrave on the pod a couple of weeks ago about this particular set, and it was like, it's just a beautiful, beautiful set. Not like, anything, off the wall. Of course, it's just supposed to look like an English Manors, but it was beautifully done.
Although I will say, on opening night, our crowd did quite literally applaud when the snow started to fall in that window from the back. Like that was a pretty impressive spectacle, and was fairly convincing, I thought, through that kind of
and the duration of it snowed for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, so that's the Mousetrap, which is kind of good long run. I think they're doing a ton of shows, so there's plenty of opportunity to get out to that through October. What else did you get to see this weekend, Toni?
I also went out to see the Phantom of the Opera with the live Corchestra Orchestra. This was their encore performance. I went to see this when they did it at the Mayan Theater in August, at the beginning of August, and I just had to see it again because this group plays an original live rock score that they've composed underneath the 1925 silent film, The Phantom of the Opera, at the Mayan Theater. It's a really impressive spectacle that they've done. When I went in August, they recorded it live, so you guys will be able to listen to their recording and play it against The Phantom of the Opera, the silent film, if you want at home, because they make their recordings accessible. They've done this quite a few times with silent films like Nosferatu and Metropolis. So those scores are already available, but for this one hasn't been released yet. So to experience it, you had to go to this encore screening, which was also sold out like the previous event. And again, we've talked about it on this show a number of times. Even though movie theaters, we hear all the time, are in this very dire state, it is really impressive when under the right circumstances, you see all these people showing up and it was a lot of young people showing up to see this film from 100 years ago.
That's great. That sounds really interesting. What about you, Matt and Libby? Have you guys seen anything in the last couple of weeks that stood out for you?
Well, we had the opportunity to go see Assassins a couple of weeks ago, which was absolutely fantastic. I thought an incredible production, incredibly acted and designed. And that was my first time at the new Miners Alley space as well, which was really cool to see. And just amazing the work they're doing over there in making that building. I was also in Creed last weekend and got to see all of the shows down there. So Xanadu, The Fantastics, Silent Sky, and the 39 Steps. And, there's something magical about that town. And when you're there and you're seeing shows, it really is just, there's nothing like it. And they did a really great job on all of those productions as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And what the show that you saw at the People's Theater?
The Legend of Anne Bonny.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw that. Which blew my mind. And that is the kind of theater that I absolutely love and wish that there was more of in this town, which is original, devised, unique actors who are giving it their all, who believe in what they're doing 100%. And you just get so drawn into that play, like from the moment it starts. And I really hope it has a larger future here and abroad.
Yeah. We spoke with Emmy McGuire on the podcast last week about it. And we hope that one. We're hoping it goes all the way someday because it really looks like it's got legs. It could go somewhere. That's great. And so, Matt, you were down in Creed for the Headwaters Play Festival, right? What were you doing there as part of that?
That's correct. I was directing a reading of a new play by a group called Dragon Seal Puppet Troupe, and they are a bilingual theater company that creates mostly shadow puppet theater. And as part of the new Headwaters Play Festival, Creed had commissioned them to write a new play. So they wrote a play about Federico Garcia Lorca and two of his associates on a night where, similar to One Night in Miami, if you're familiar with that play, where Hermenegildo Lanz and Falla, a famous composer, all three of them got together on Three Kings Night, which is the celebration of the three wise men in Spain. This was a true story, at Federico Garcia Lorca's home, and they put on an evening of 3 puppet shows for his family and his friends. And so this play was sort of about that night, but also about Lorca's legacy and the Spanish Civil War. It was really beautiful and really cool to watch. And I'd actually never seen anything like their kind of puppetry before. So it was really neat to be a part of that and be a part of that whole weekend.
That's great. And anything else, Toni? Kibbles and Bits. What was that?
Yeah, I went to this comedy show / fundraiser for animal rescues that's being done by comedian BK Sherrod. It'll be happening pretty regularly on the first Saturday of every month at 4 p.m. at the Denver Comedy Underground. And each show features a new animal rescue that they're going to be supporting. At this time, they had some foster dogs in attendance in the audience. So dogs were sitting amongst people at the Denver Comedy Underground. Comedians were riffing about the dogs. They brought the dogs up on stage. It was a very lighthearted time. And only thing that was odd was it felt strange to be watching stand-up comedy at 4 p.m. with a mostly sober crowd. Usually the comedy people, they joked during the show. Well, and yeah, with dogs. That's a good point, Alex. But they joked during the show that normally their audience comes in almost comically drunk and rowdy. And so it was interesting to just have to let the jokes land as they were.
Right. That's great. Yeah, well, the only other thing I got out to was I got to my one show at Red Rocks this year. So Spoon with the Pixies. So Spoon's one of my favorite alt rock bands. They blew the Pixies off the stage, although they were the opening act. The Pixies were just kind of okay, but Pixies are more I don't know, kind of almost like a retro act. They haven't really made anything. They have made some new music since their heyday, but nothing of great interest. Whereas Spoon is one of these bands that just, they've been at it and they keep putting out relevant albums. So, in my opinion, so yeah, Matt, Libby, did you guys get out to Red Rocks at all this summer?
I actually got to go out twice this summer in May. 2 concerts in 1 week. I got to see Leon Bridges, and La Lome opened for Leon Bridges. And then a couple days later, I got to see Black Keys and Hermanos Gutierrez opened for them. And it was a very fantastic week of concerts. I was so glad I got to do that. Red Rocks is my favorite place in the whole world.
It really is. And, sometimes you can be, blasted by rain or hail or wind. The night that I saw last Wednesday or something was one of those just perfect nights, it was beautiful, beautiful weather. So, all right. Yeah, go ahead.
That is the best. That's the absolute best. Matt actually proposed to me at Red Rocks.
What?
True.
Whoa.
Was it during a concert? Or
no, it was actually in December, so there wasn't anybody there. It was it had snowed the day before, so it was just us and a few other randos. And then as soon as I got down on my knee, this bus full of middle schoolers showed up for a field trip. And they all came over and sort of watched, and I was like, "She said yes," and then they all started cheering and throwing snowballs.
Snowballs everywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic!
Oh my gosh.
Did you do it on the stage or?
No, it was just at the top of the amphitheater. I think they might have had it closed off because of the snow.
Yeah, I didn't want to go down there.
It was treacherous.
All right. Well, that's great. All right, Toni, well, let's switch over to the news section. What else? What have we got here? So on the personnel side of things, big news from Performance Now Theatre Company. So they're bringing on Kelly Van Osbury as their new artistic director. So KVO is a friend of the pod and a well-known and respected director and choreographer she's been the AD for Brighton's Platte Valley Theater Arts for the past several years. And she's also, she's directed for a number of other theaters.
Yeah, namely Performance Now. And she's directed a number of times already for Performance Now, where she's taking over. So she clearly knows this company pretty well. And Performance Now they typically put on big, well-known musicals at the Lakewood Cultural Center.
Yeah, they usually generally do pretty well at the Henrys. I think they had a number of nominations this year. I can't remember if they had any wins, but Kelly takes over from Alyssa Inahara, who's been the running the show there for 20 years and will continue on as the board secretary.
Yeah, that's quite a run over there, and they've produced a number of really impressive musicals under her time. It does make me wonder what this means, though, for Platte Valley Arts. That's a small company that Kelly kind of shepherded over there. It punches above its weight, and I'd say that's largely been due to her leadership.
Yeah. Hard to say, but they had a little news this week. They announced that they've been selected as a recipient for a grant from Arts Midwest funded by the NEA. So supports an upcoming community-wide arts and humanities initiative that shines a light on the history and legacy of Japanese Americans, which apparently the Brighton community has a legacy history there of that culture. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's nice to see. Yeah, it's good to see someone still getting money from the NEA at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
What else?
Well, I'd say there have been a couple of season announcements since we last talked. Yesterday, Sunday, September 7th, Phamaly Theatre Company announced its 2026 season. And artistic director Ben Rana quipped, "It's not Cats, it's not Oklahoma," but they did put together a pretty interesting season of 5 shows, which is one more than they did this year. Their theme for the season is "We Are Here." And like usual, they're a nomadic troupe, so they kind of bounce around where they're doing each of these shows. First up is an adaptation of Little Women by Aaron C. Riley. It's going to be directed by Shelley Gaza over at the North Glen Arts. Shelley's worked with the company before. She did A Midsummer Night's Dream with them a couple of years ago, did a really banger job of that. So curious to see her take on Little Women and what this adaptation means and what Phamaly, which is a disability affirmative theater company, what they really bring to this show and this story.
That's great.
Also up from them, they're doing a co-production with the Aurora Art Center. They're doing this musical called Violet, which I had never heard of before, but it's inspired by this short story, The Ugliest Pilgrim by Doris Betta. And it tells the story of a young woman who is disfigured in an accident, and she embarks on a journey by bus from her farm in North Carolina to Oklahoma in order to be healed. But she kind of goes on a personal journey along the way. I saw you nodding along, Libby. Do you know this one?
A very good friend of mine just recently directed it.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it at all, but apparently it's got some like really cool sounding music of everything from like folk to gospel to like Americana style sounds. So it's definitely something new for the area, which is cool. Another new thing to the area is the world premiere of a new musical they're doing, 504 the Musical, being directed by Ben Rana at the DCPA. And this musical takes place during the 1977 sit-ins for disability rights. It follows a majority disability ensemble cast and grapples with questions such as how does a community reimagine the world to better meet their needs, and how do social movements stay unified while navigating internal conflict. Ben, in the announcement video that they shared on Facebook, sounded really excited about this piece. And he was really just kind of driving home how powerful it was to get to perform this piece on the DCPA's stage. So really cool. Looking forward to seeing that one. And then they're rounding out their season with Tiny Beautiful Things, co-directed by Stacey D'Angelo and Ben Rana at the People's Building in Aurora. And this is an interesting take on the familiar play, which follows an advice columnist named Sugar. Normally, the show has like 4 letter writers who kind of circle Sugar as she answers their questions. But this show is going to be a one-woman show that will feature 85 people via video representing the letter readers from around the world. So it's going to be this massive collaborative production featuring disabled artists around the globe, just kind of showing a global disabled power at this time and presenting this really unified front, which I think sounds like a really cool spin on this play.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And then finally, they're doing Pericles, an adapted performance for people with cognitive disabilities, for a 1-week run in November at the Lone Tree Art Center. So they did this production this year. It was funded by the NEA. They were supposed to do a lot more productions over the next several years. Funding got cut, but Ben teased that they had something lined up that had allowed them to do this 1-week run and possibly other things that I suppose we'll just all have to wait and see about.
Yeah. Well, we also heard from the Aurora Art Center announced their 5-show 2026 season over the weekends. As you pointed out, Toni, it's down 1 productions from its 6-show season in 2025. But they're kicking things off in January with Waiting for Godot, which is cool. That it's not something that gets done all that often, so people have an opportunity to see. Now, it's definitely a little bit different from the usual stuff that they're doing there. And then Fat Ham, what do you know about this one? This is one I've always wanted to see.
Yeah, this is the Colorado premiere of the play by James LeJames, and it's a queer Black take on Hamlet. So it's set in the South, in and it follows Juicy, who is a Southern college student whose father shows up in their backyard and demands that Juicy avenge his murder. And it feels very familiar to this character who knows Hamlet's story. So he's like, wait a second, am I in a Hamlet situation right now? And so it's kind of riffing on this Hamlet story but it features a really sensitive and self-aware young Black man at the center of the piece. So it's also apparently very funny and just very self-aware and meta for anybody who loves Shakespeare. There's a lot of those in-jokes.
That's great. And then, you mentioned Violet. They're doing a co-production with Phamaly. That's in June. And then all the way a year from now, Feeding Beatrice by Kristen Greenridge. And then they're doing Hank Williams' Lost Highway next December. So that's the Aurora Fox season. And then also, Toni, we heard from Central City Opera. What are they up to for the next year?
Yeah, they announced their 94th season, which congratulations for going that long. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. That is scheduled to run June 27th through August 2nd, 2026. It's going to feature 3 productions: Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro, revival of the Ballad of Baby Doe, and Terrence McNally's Masterclass. Special for a couple of reasons. The Ballad of Baby Doe is going to be marking 2 anniversaries. One, Colorado's 150th birthday, and the 70th anniversary of the opera's debut at Central City Opera. So kind of a big full circle, poignant moment for the company because that work is set during Colorado's mining era and premiered during that time when it was very popular in the city, which is and then Masterclass is also pretty interesting because it centers on opera singers and features prominent arias, but it is a return to form for the festival's early tradition of putting on plays alongside the operas. Usually in the past years, this spot has been held by a musical like Kiss Me Kate or this year, Once Upon a Mattress. And so it's interesting that they've swapped that Broadway musical out for a straight play.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a departure for them, but yeah, Masterclass is definitely it's a cool play and certainly appropriate for an opera company of some kind. It's about Marie Callas. So cool. Well, let's talk King Penny radio show. We got Matt and Libby here. How you want to kick it off, Toni?
Well, I mean, I guess we can just kind of dig right into it for folks who don't know. Can you talk with us a little bit about King Penny, which was started back in 2022?
All right. So King Penny is a 1940s improvised radio show. And we do our show in full 1940s costume with 1940s style old radio microphones. We also have a Foley artist. And a Foley artist is someone who does all of the sound effects for a radio show. So we have someone who does bells and whistles and walking and opening doors, that sort of thing, along with a live pianist who also accompanies us throughout the show to give color and background. And we pull suggestions from our audience that we base the show on. So before the show starts, we don't know the genre that we're going to be doing, and we don't know the title that we're going to be doing either. And the premise is that King Penny is a purveyor of all sorts of goods, soft goods, hard goods, everything in between. So, modern day Amazon type of comparison to what King Penny might be in the 1940s. And so we also have our audience give us suggestions for fake products that we advertise throughout the show, that we just are able to throw in suggestions from our audience to have them be able to participate in our show.
That's great. What's an example of a fake product?
Oh gosh, one of my favorite ones that we pulled out was called a tank blanket. And who knows what a tank blanket is, but I think at the time it was something that keeps your tank, maybe your fish tank warm at night, so your fish don't freeze or whatever that might be. But that was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, we pulled one, I want to say like maybe it was a year ago, that was the King Penny Pocket Procrastinator. And it was like this tiny little man that lives in your pocket. Anytime you have something to do, it's like, well, you could do that, or you could read the funny pages. Yeah, but we never really know, and it's sort of the audience comes up with some really clever, fun stuff that we get to bounce around and play off with.
I remember when I saw this show over at the Savoy in Denver, our crowd suggested the Toe Tickler 2000, which you guys just took and ran with.
Yeah. It's wild. And every show, though we have maybe 7 genres to choose from, the titles are always brand new and the products are always brand new. So every show that we do is always different, but set within this 1940s fictional recording studio, which we call WKPR Studios.
And what I like the most about this particular form that we do is it takes traditional improv and sort of pushes it to a different level in that we are standing still, we're not moving, and so we have to describe for our audience what they are seeing and what they're hearing. And so it's a little bit of a mix of long form improv and short form improv kind of all smushed together, which I find really fun.
Yeah, most improv that you see, and if you ever take classes, they'll tell you is show, don't tell. Act it out. Show it in your behavior. Don't say what you're doing. But for us, it's the complete opposite. Because we are operating in a audio format, we have to tell and overly explain and describe when somebody walks into the room, what the dame looks like and the cut of her hair and the swivel of her dress and that sort of thing, which is just fun and a great practice for us who've been doing improv for a long time. We met doing improv in 2004 at the Impulse Theater, which used to be beneath the Wine Coop Brewery and for a long time was Denver's longest running show. And so we've been doing improv together for over 20 years. This form really challenges us in a wonderful way.
And what compelled you guys to set it within this 1940s time period? What grabs you about that kind of radio show and that feel of that time? You mentioned that it pushes you as an improviser to kind of talk through things, but are there other signatures of that time, of this genre, of this the radio shows that existed at that time that you guys just really love?
Yeah.
I think for me I feel like that particular time period was this very Americana idealistic view of what we think patriotism is and just that sort of flavor of America post World War, full of opportunity and optimism and just really exploring what that is, especially kind of juxtaposed here we are 80 years later, and some of those themes are still really prevalent, and some of the themes that we kind of play around with, which is a lot of misogyny and attitudes towards women and how they are portrayed during that particular time period, and just sort of poking fun at that. I think it's just a fun way to kind of look at how far we've come.
Yeah, as storytellers, the radio era was a time pre-television. And we get to exist in a genre where we are creating story for people simply by the words we are using and we are painting. We don't have the image to help us out and to do the work for you. So that's always very exciting too. Plus, I just love the fashion. I love dressing up and wearing wingtip shoes.
We wanted to ask you, so you met in Colorado, but then you moved to New York but then you came back. So what's that, how did that all transpire?
Well, I went to grad school at the National Theatre Conservatory, which was a part of the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. Sadly, it closed. I was part of the last class. Alphabetically, I'm the last student to have gone through the NTC. But that set me up to have an agent in New York. And through that showcase, I was able to get an agent, and we decided to move out there and give it a shot. We gave ourselves a 10-year sort of buffer to say, let's see how much we like it. And if we don't, we can move somewhere else. Well, we were there for 9.5 years with a pandemic that made it feel like 15 or 16. And we just kind of felt like, do we want to stay and rebuild that community? Some of the theaters that we had been working at, like the People's Improv Theater, where we'd produced a lot, closed. And we kind of decided we wanted to go somewhere else and try to rebuild a new community. Around that same time, Libby, who had been working as the HR manager for Playwrights Horizons off Broadway, was looking for something new and saw that the Arvada Center had an opening for their HR manager. So she applied, and because she's awesome, she got it. And so it kind of felt like the right catalyst to bring us back here to Denver, where we could then take the next steps in our career. Myself taking more of a leap into the realm of directing, and Libby taking over the HR position at Arvada Center. Plus, most of my family is here and all of our friends. So it felt like sort of getting back into a nice warm blanket.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I've done the same thing. I went from New York to Colorado and then to New York and then back to Colorado with some stops in the way. Colorado is a great place to be. And New York's fun, but it's not for everyone. But you guys were there for almost 10 years, so you must have liked it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if the pandemic hadn't happened, we'd probably still be there. I think I can only speak for myself. I guess I can't really talk for you, Liz.
It's entirely likely. Yeah, I mean, as much as I love Colorado, New York is a place that is special in that things only happen in New York. There are those special little things that you just don't get anywhere else. But I certainly don't miss riding on the subway every day. But I do miss all of the wonderful food, and we had some fantastic friends
Right.
that we had made out there, and I certainly miss them a lot. But it's great to be here in Colorado.
What part of town did you live in when you were there?
We were in Astoria for the entire
Okay.
time. Yeah, sort of right near the famous Bohemian Beer Garden for the first 9 years, and then we moved to in the pandemic, this apartment that had a rooftop, a private rooftop, which was incredible. We could have never afforded it otherwise, and we were there, and then we discovered in the summertime why it was so cheap, and that was because it was kind of like a Roach Central. It was like right on the corner of these two streets and like a sewage plant. So in the summertime, we got a lot of little critters, and that also was probably one of the reasons we decided it was time to move to Colorado.
Yeah. Well, since then, Matt, you've had some pretty high-profile shows. Like this summer, you were in The Tempest and Richard II at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, and really some memorable performances there. I saw both of them, and you were fantastic. I have to say, what was that experience like?
Well, thank you for saying that. It was nice to be back. I went to school at CU Boulder and got my BFA there and had worked at the Shakespeare Festival, but the last time I did was in 2005. So it had been 20 years since I'd worked for the CSF. But it was wonderful to be back and great to see some of the new actors who I'd never gotten to work with before. I'm a huge fan of Karen Slack and Sean Scrutchins, and getting to play opposite them in The Tempest was just, every day was a dream with those two.
Mm-hmm.
They're just such generous and talented people. And it was great. Boulder's a great place to spend a summer, especially when you're just sort of acting in the evenings and you have time to hang out and sightsee at your own leisure. So it was really nice to be back there.
And Libby, your day job, as you mentioned, in addition to all the Kingpenny stuff, is you run HR over at the Arvada Center, which I imagine is a fairly big job. What does that actually mean? What does your day-to-day kind of look like?
So my main job is to run payroll for our employees. And then I also help in the hiring of employees. I help with exit interviews. I help write policy. In fact, today I got to announce a new paid parental leave policy for the entire Arvada Center. I work really closely on a lot of their DE&I initiatives. So we call it IDEA there. So it's inclusion, diversity, equity, and access is that other side of things. And so there's a lot that I do just in helping to train the staff in those principles and supporting the staff. And then, the classic HR stuff where you get to help with conflict when it arises. But luckily, we have a wonderful staff over there, and it doesn't happen all that often. But that is the main thing that I do is just support the employees through their employee life cycle, if you will.
Fun little Easter egg also, if you see a show at the Arvada Center, chances are it's Libby who's doing the curtain speech. So if you go and see the Mousetrap, the opening curtain speech is actually Libby sort of laying out the house rules and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little Easter egg for our listeners now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Well, what's coming up for Kingpenny and for Matt? What have you got coming up show-wise?
Well, Kingpenny, we have our next show coming up at the Clock Tower Cabaret. We have a run there every third Thursday. So that is going to be on the 18th. And our Kingpenny shows at the Clock Tower, they're a little bit bigger. They're a little bit grander. And so we also have guest stars each month. Last month, we had Andrew Overdahl, the comedian from Those Who Can't and the Grolics, as well as Gracie Goodnight, who's a Clock Tower variety performer. This coming up month, we have the incredible spoken word artist Katie Kramer, who was a National Slam Poetry champion, a World of Women Poetry Slam semifinalist, and she's just an absolutely incredible spoken word artist. And she will be there. And then we have another special guest artist who you'll just have to come see the show if you want to find out who that is. But so we
All
have a
right.
show starting every third Thursday with King Penny at the Clock Tower Cabaret, and we will be performing with Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company for their New Year's show. We did this last year as well, which is great. It's an early New Year's. They do it at the Dairy Center up in Boulder. So I think the show starts at 7. The ball drops at like 8:45, and then everybody's home by 9:30. So it's the exact kind of New Year's that you want.
Yeah, New Year's for old folks.
Yeah, and then as for myself, I'm in the process of directing right now Mr. Burns, a post-electric play by Anne Washburn for Red Rocks Community College that I am so excited is going to be performed at the historic Elitch Theater. So that play is about sort of post-apocalyptic survival community theater. It's very Station 11 meets The Walking Dead meets Our Town.
Wow.
And we're going to do it at the Old Elitch Theater in a sort of immersive style, backstage for the first couple acts and then out in the stage for the finale, which I think is going to be really cool. And then as soon as that's done, I head to Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company to do Every Brilliant Thing, which is a really beautiful one-person show that has been at the top of my list for a long time.
Yeah, I was excited to see that you were cast for that. And I think it's a great choice, and really looking forward to seeing you in that later. When is that show?
It opens the weekend after Thanksgiving and then runs all the way till the end of the year. So I think December 30th might be the last show. I'd have to double check.
Mm-hmm. Have you done any one-man shows before, solo shows?
I actually did the Santaland Diaries with Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company back in 2012 at the Dairy Center, which then moved to the Garner Galleria in 2013, and then to the Jones Theater in 2014. And then at that point, I was living in New York and was like, all right, I really need to stay in New York to work. So, I gave it up, which was hard to do because it's such a fun show to do.
Right.
And then I did a few one-person shows in New York of my own writing, but this will be my first time doing a official scripted one-person show in a number of years, and I'm very excited about it.
Great. All right. Well, Matt and Libby Zambrano, thanks so much for coming on the OnStage Colorado podcast. Definitely look forward to seeing all the stuff that you guys are going to be up to in the next year, and as one of the preeminent performing couples here in Colorado, I'd have to say.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do to bring advocacy and news to the arts and Colorado out here. You know, one thing that we didn't say about moving back to Denver was that though New York has the capital T theater scene, the theater scene here in Colorado really is unlike anything else. And that's due in no small part to people like yourselves, people like John Moore, people who are just constantly out telling the stories. Beyond just go buy tickets and see this show, but actually getting in depth with the performers and the writers and the producers and the directors. And, you know, it just makes it feel like a real community. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'll have my interview with the Third Side Theatre Company to talk about The Princess and the Goblins with the writing team, Kelly Fox and Brian Dowling, plus director Aaron Vega. So thanks again, Matt and Libby.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. What a pleasure.
OnStage Colorado is brought to you by the Aurora Fox Arts Center, presenting Schoolhouse Rock Live, September 19th through October 18th. Relive the magic of Saturday mornings following Tom, a nervous young teacher, as characters on his TV spring to life and show him how to inspire his students through imagination and music. Tickets at aurorafoxartscenter.org. OnStage Colorado is sponsored in part by Colorado Candlelight, featuring Steel Magnolias, September 11th through November 9th. In a small Louisiana beauty salon, 6 women share humor, love, and strength in a play that blends heartwarming comedy with moments of poignant emotion. Tickets at coloradocandlelight.com. We're also supported by the Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, whose production of The Thin Place plays September 12th through 28th at the Denver Savoy and at the Boulder Dairy Center October 3rd through 26th. Lucas Nath's play is the story of a teenage girl who claims she can communicate with the dead and brings a recently deceased woman back to life during a church service. Tickets at betc.org. And we're also supported by Denver's Curious Theater, presenting Eureka Day by Jonathan Spector, September 4th through October 5th. This timely story is about parents at a progressive private school who face a crisis when a mumps outbreak occurs and they must confront their beliefs about vaccination. Tickets at curioustheater.org. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by Littleton Town Hall, whose production of Buddy, the Buddy Holly story, runs September 12th through October 19th. From his meteoric rise to fame to his legendary final performance, this musical features all of Buddy's greatest hits. Tickets at townhallartscenter.org. Also supporting OnStage Colorado is the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center at Colorado College, presenting Miss Holmes and Miss Watson September 18th through October 5th. Oddball female roommates Sherlock Holmes and Joan Watson join forces and emerge from the COVID pandemic fog as a deeply codependent, quasi-dysfunctional odd couple adventure duo. Tickets at fac.coloradocollege.edu.
Well, that was a lot of fun having Matt and Libby on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. What a fun couple, and they're out there, they're doing it. I definitely recommend getting out to the King Penny. It really is a fun show if you haven't seen it. I love Foley. Just seeing somebody doing live Foley is so much fun.
Yeah, and the guy they've got doing it, he's spot on. Everything from like the walking sound effects to all the world sound effects to, of course, the kind of radio sounds that you would want to hear at a radio show like this. So,
yeah.
Well, now we are going to go in a totally different direction, and we're going to throw it to Alex's conversation with Third Side Theater to talk about The Princess and the Goblins.
All right, we are here today to talk with some of the folks from Third Side Theater who are premiering The Princess and the Goblins at the People's Building in September. So welcome to the podcast, all of you. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yes. All right, so we have the writers, Kelly Fox and Brian Dowling, as well as Aaron Vega, who's the director. And also, Aaron, you sort of run the People's Building there.
Yeah, I'm actually the project manager for Library and Cultural Services for the city of Aurora. So my job is hyper-focused on the Arts District over on East Colfax.
Great. And so I don't know that I've seen you direct anything recently. Has it been a little while?
It has been a long time. I actually made it a rule when I started working over at the People's Building about 6 years ago, that I wouldn't direct in the space for a long time because I didn't want it to be my space. I wanted to make sure that other resident artists and people that live in the community got a chance to test their ideas and practice. But when I saw Third Side's production of The Old Man and the Old Moon last year, which was at the People's Building, I've known Kelly for a while. We worked on a project for the Catamounts up in Boulder at the Dairy Arts Center together right before the shutdown. So I was really excited about Third Side. I went and saw their production and went, how do I get to be a part of this? So it's a core company of players and writers and visual artists and musicians, and they've all found theater kind of through the Third Side. And it was really exciting to me to work with a group of people that writes their own material, does all of their own puppetry, and really it's all hands on deck for every production.
That's great. And Kelly and Brian, were you part of the creation of Third Side?
Yes, we are 2 of the original 9 co-founding members.
All right. Can you tell me a little bit about Third Side, like when it was founded, what was the driving force behind forming this theater collective?
Can we take that?
Do we turn? Sure. I think we turn to Brian, who's one of the board members.
Well, so is Kelly.
You can tag team.
We came together. We originally did The Old Man and the Old Moon with the Evergreen Players. Was that 4 years ago now?
Yeah.
And it was just such an amazing experience. It felt like lightning in a bottle, where the collaboration between the group of us created something that was very special, that we recognized that and wanted to continue working together. So, we did the thing that most people say, that's probably not the wisest thing to do. And we're like, hey, let's start our own theater company. And we wanted to focus on original works or rarely done works. And so we did our first production up at the I don't think they have the space anymore, but the Evergreen Players had a studio space up there. We did our first production, The Legacy of Becker Street, spring before last,
which Brian wrote.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then we decided that since The Old Man and the Old Moon brought us together, it was important for us to do that show again in our inaugural season. So that's when we remounted the show. All the original players did the exact roles they did in the first production, and we did that here at the People's Building. And then now we're doing The Princess and the Goblins, and it's really excited. And we have a lot of credit to give to Aaron here, who basically gave us the idea, and we are following the thread. Kelly led the charge on writing the script for it, but that's what brought us to the here and now.
Okay. I feel like I should know this, but what does Third Side mean?
So actually, go back to referencing The Old Man and the Old Moon. There is a line in the show that refers to looking at things from another perspective, from the third side. And since we wanted to be able to harken back to, give an homage to what brought us all together. And so that's why we named it Third Side Theater, because, well, we are looking at things from another perspective of how to do things in regards to theater and art. And that's the name. That's
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we were heavily influenced and inspired by Pigpen Theatre Company that wrote The Old Man and the Old Moon, a group that works together incredibly collaboratively, devises their own pieces. They just recently created the music together for Water for Elephants that was on Broadway as well. But they do everything truly as a team. They don't credit themselves individually. They have put out some really interesting work involving puppetry, shadow puppetry. They're their own band. So kind of folks that do a lot, that all wear many hats, and we all felt like we identified with that a lot.
Yes.
Where's that theater?
They are, I believe they're currently based out of New York. It's a group of how many men?
Oh gosh, I don't remember the exact number, but it's not a big company all in all. And yes, we definitely
I want to say 7 of them, but
sounds
that
right.
could be wrong.
And they've got a good reputation in New York. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess here locally in Colorado, you can think of Buntport, as a crew that kind of does, all originals for the most part, and just kind of does it as a team. So, what would you say is the theater's mission and vision, and what makes it the approach distinctive? I always want to ask newer theater companies, like, why do you exist? What's how do you explain yourselves?
if you don't have anything new to say, don't say it at all, right?
I don't know.
I personally think to really stretch the bounds of collaborative work, because we certainly don't all have our own silos like a traditional theater production would have. There's so much crossover, and there's so much like lightning in a bottle, let's use that term, or just like the sum is greater than the parts, when you kind of put all the minds together. And that's what's really fascinating to me personally.
And to talk about one of our catchphrases, or whatever you would like to call it, Third Side Theater from scratch, from the ground up. Let's build it ourselves. And we'd all work together with our scripts. We do read-throughs together. We coach each other. Everything is all done internally with us. So I don't know. It's something that's really special to us, to me, to my heart.
And as somebody who's coming from the outside looking at this, who spent a lot of time in New York and has worked all over the world, to come to Denver, where we sort of have a more traditional theater model here for the most part. We've got a model that works very well for places like the Arvada Center, the Denver Center. You mentioned Buntport. We talked about the Catamounts briefly, where Kelly and I met. There are these companies out there that have proven that they can be sustainable while still creating work that energizes them, as opposed to trying to seek out titles or paying for rights. This group, again, is really exciting because they are not just actors. They are musicians. They are stage combatants. They are puppeteers. They are writers. And when you get those kinds of brains all together in the same room, you end up with a product that I think the metro area is hungry for. I think there's a lot of potential audience members out there who are really looking for an experience or looking for something different from the traditional theater that they've seen before. Maybe they participated in high school. And so when you start to break down the boundaries between departments, like Kelly said, you end up with a product that is really exciting and feels really original, even though this book is from the 1800s that we adapted the piece from. It feels really exciting and unique and universal. And sometimes that's hard to capture when you're working with an existing script or an existing score.
Right. So it was so George MacDonald originally wrote this Princess and the Goblin in the 19th century. It's like a fairy tale. So where did the idea to turn Princess and the Goblins into a musical?
Well, it was Aaron who sort of came to me like, hey, we have this spot open. Do y'all want it? And I said, well, we don't have anything ready yet. And he said, we can get something ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
no
to
pressure.
Yeah, I have to say, I sort of pushed them. They were looking for their next project after The Old Man and the Moon, The Old Man and the Old Moon remount that they did at the People's Building. A group had just left the season. They had just dropped their dates at the People's Building. There were 2 weekends that opened up, and I had created a version of this project for a Bunraku tabletop puppet company that I had helped found just north of Cincinnati years and years ago. And it was all puppets, and it was a recorded soundtrack, almost like a radio play. But I love the text. There's just so much incredible nuance and depth into a piece that was written before Freud, before Jung, before all of these psychiatrists, and so the way people were handling the situation around them and the stories they told to sort of create myth are really powerful in this book. And of course, when C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien and Lewis Carroll all cite this one fairly unknown author as their mentor and inspiration, you should probably read those books. And so handed the idea over. The core company talked about it. They decided to go for it. And then we just set ourselves really strict deadlines. And Kelly and Brian went off as sort of a writing team. And Kelly went to adapting the book and then would pass it off to Brian, who would zhuzh language and sort of play with some dialogue, things like that. Then we would have a reading with the core company. Even though not all of those core company members are acting in the piece, they're fantastic actors, so why not use them? And they would read through the script, we'd all take notes, and then we'd come back and adjust and play. So it's been a really fun, quick process. But, if you give people 5 weeks, they're going to take 5 weeks. If you give them 2 years, they're going to take 2 years. So,
yeah. Well, so that's the story. Let's talk about the music. What musical palette?
Alex, Abdul Karim, and Ryan Glazer are the music team. They're 3 core company members, and they're all professional musicians and just amazing at what they do. And it came from the writing process. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so it's not a true musical. There is more than anything, there will be atmospheric underscoring and kind of thematic place setting with the music. There will be a little singing. But again, I wouldn't classify it as like a full musical.
Okay.
But
got it.
The music process, I think, they started from the text and sort of tried to create different textures that would go with these different thematic worlds we were living in. And I think like the whole process, there's a lot of subconscious pull in this text, and like kind of how do we play into that in different ways?
Yeah, one of the themes is follow the thread, which now we sort of all kind of know what it was in the early mid 1800s. This idea of following a thought, and George MacDonald actually created an actual plot line where the characters are following this invisible thread,
a magical thread,
and you see it in old fairy tales a lot. And that whole idea of follow the thread has led us through this process where Kelly will have an idea, again, the collaborative nature of Third Side. Kelly will have an idea, Brian will have an idea, they'll sort of shout it out. The musicians are in the room for the readings, so they get very, very excited and they start sketching out ideas, and then they go off into a studio together and they start immediately sending sound files. And what about this as a leitmotif? What about this for this character? What about this for this sound? And they all start nerding out on sound in the same way Kelly and Brian were nerding out on the script. And it all happens very organically and quickly.
It's great. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the world of the play. So the story moves between different worlds. There's the princess's, protected home and the mysterious goblin caverns. So what are we seeing on stage? Is it like a full set or just kind of a suggested set or what?
Leave this for the director.
Yeah, it's a director question.
One of the most exciting things for me when I see something on stage is minimalism. I think theater at its best is the perfect combination between a really good book and church or some sort of religious ceremony where the audience is allowed to participate, whether that's physically in an immersive production, which this is not, or with their imaginations. And I think theater, unlike other art forms like film or, theater allows the audience to use their imagination. The entire game is suspension of disbelief. So the more we can strip away and introduce the audience into clever, I'll call them cleverer ways of looking at things. So we're using a lot of puppetry. We're using a lot of shadow puppetry. Really, we're looking, the show is in a true thrust, meaning the audience is on three sides of the action. And we have 2 boxes with some surprises in them, which we will not tell you, and a whole bunch of puppets and handheld lights and
a lot of string.
And the whole point is that we are moving between these fantastical worlds. So if we can get the audience to fill in the blanks, we've done our job, rather than building elaborate sets and taking all this time to try to create a film version essentially on stage. We're really using the inherent theatricality of the art form and playing around with how can when is a box not a box? When is a string not a string? When is a prop not a prop? So there are a lot of beautiful things that I think the audience keeps engaging the audiences as they watch. We never want to talk down to the audience, and so there's a lot of use of the audience's imagination. Does that feel accurate?
No, it does.
Yeah.
And I'll say there are times when I'm watching something happen. Like Aaron will have like this amazing idea and we'll see it. I don't want to give it away, but there's one thing last week we're working on something and Kelly was moving and Aaron was like, "Oh, do this." And I saw this thing happen and I am just lost in it watching, and I go, "Oops, I'm in this now." Because I just got so into watching it myself, I got lost in it. So that's what the audience is going to see when they come and they see this show we're creating.
It really speaks to part of the founding vision of our company as well, of using your constraints to inspire even more creativity, right? So we're living in a post-COVID world for theater. You know, we're a small new company. Our budget is small, but it's like, how do we take what some would consider a limitation and actually turn it into our strength? How do we get more creative with what we have? Yeah.
And we've been able to there's a specific kind of staging technique that we've been using in this process. If people are familiar with theater, oftentimes the actors show up, they have their scripts in front of them, the director tells them where to go, the designers then look at a run, and away you go. And for this process, we used a technique called the viewpoints technique, which was made popular by Anne Bogart from the City Company and Tina Landau. Both of whom have done incredible things in New York and all over the place. And the main purpose of that technique is to break the ensemble and the cast and the crew, break everything they're thinking about down so that they can find the most specific way to tell that story. And sometimes that means we're not going to create a wall of boulders. The actual actors are going to be a wall of boulders. When you see shows like Peter and the Starcatcher, they're often staged this way. And what you end up with is a physical process that emulates the company's writing process and ethos.
Okay. Cool. I haven't. Sure, why not? Yeah, whatever you say.
Check out the book sometime. It's great. The viewpoints.
Okay.
It's amazing.
No, I get it. It sounds really interesting, and yeah, it is. It really does. What you're getting back to is like, you know, that making people imagine what these things look like rather than just kind of going through all the, you know, the ups and downs of creating a set and whatever, that kind of stuff. I wanted to ask one more thing about the script itself. So from the source material, was there enough there to, you know, story-wise, did you have to add much, or how much, you know, tweaking did you have to do?
I'd say there was a lot to pull from. It's a long enough story for sure. There was a lot of restructuring in terms of the order that things happened, but also in terms of what was most important for us to emphasize thematically. Brian?
Yeah, well, there was also the challenge that they're, 1872. So some of the language was a little antiquated. So yes, there was some editing and whatnot we needed to do. So it made more sense to this audience. And also, without giving it away, we did change the ending. It is a different ending than what's in the book.
Okay.
I feel like we pulled from things that are almost said in the book, but aren't really said. So it's like we went a step further than where the book is.
It's not going. It's the ending is not going
in the
against,
spirit of it,
yes,
for sure.
It is definitely not.
Can you give just a quick idea what the plot is? Just to say, what's it about? But like, what's the plot? And I know it says audiences of all ages. I mean, if we think of fairy tales or that kind of thing being for children, but it sounds like you're really trying to appeal to all audiences.
Yeah, 100%. This is for all audiences. We like to use that appeal to themes from The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, A Never-Ending Story, just a lot of those kinds of vibes for the aesthetic of it as well. Has a lot of those kinds of feelings for it. And being a kid from the 80s, that means a lot to me too. But
yeah, a project that is really fun for parents to watch, that there's nothing inappropriate about it, but it is spooky, it is scary. So the plot follows a Princess Irene, who has been locked away essentially in a country house by her father, the king. She doesn't know why. It's kept a mystery from her. She accidentally gets caught out at dusk one night. She's never allowed after dark outside, and she starts getting chased by goblins. She runs into a miner boy, so a boy from the mines, much lower class, and they strike up a friendship. So there's a lot of that element to it, of what does it mean to be royal? What does it mean to be of different classes? How do we accept other people? And then they discover a vicious plot by the goblins to try to take over the sun realm, as they call it. And hilarity ensues.
And in the midst of that, Irene meets her magical great-great-grandmother, who is this wonderful, mythical teacher figure that is really diving into these timeless archetypes of, like, the wizard,
it's like Gandalf,
the wise woman. Yeah. And so there's a lot of, I think, deep material there as well in those scenes, like things that I think you could take on a surface level, or you could really let them impact you if you so are inclined.
Yeah, the adults are going to find the depth of the script and the story. The kids are just going to enjoy all the fun fairy tale bits.
And so if it is kind of scary, would you say like kids over 10 or something like that? Or?
I don't think there's anything overtly scary to it. It just has those kind of some spooky vibes to it. The goblins aren't, they're not terrifying or anything like that. But I do think a good comparison. Yes, there is a lot of humor to it. There are some comedic elements to it as well. It's got everything.
I think if you would let your kids watch Jim Henson's The Labyrinth, then this is great for you, no matter the age of the kid.
What the hell are goblins anyway? Are they like orcs? I'm trying to think of
usually smaller. Goblins are usually like the smaller ones, shorter, usually green, pointy ears, usually long noses.
In this world that George MacDonald created, they were once much like people, he says, and they lived above ground, but they were driven underground in some sort of conflict, war, and they've just like mutated under the ground. And you can see a lot of the inspiration of that in Gollum in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
He definitely drew from the goblins in this book for that.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Third Sight Theater's premiere of The Princess and the Goblins will be at the People's Building in Aurora, September 12th through 20th. Kelly Fox, Brian Dowling, and Aaron Vega, thanks so much for coming on the OnStage Colorado podcast to talk about it. Break legs all around with this effort. It sounds great. I'm going to try and get out and see it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Great to hear directly from the creators of New Work a little bit about that production that they're mounting over at the People's Building.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a really fun process putting that together. So thanks to that whole crew for coming on.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of our show for this week. Alex, what's on the pod next week?
Well, we'll have I think it'll be one of our regular episodes with the headliners. And plus we'll have an interview with Tim Kennedy from Ovation West to talk about their upcoming production of Annie Get Your Gun up there in Evergreen. And also to hear about Ovation West. I'm not too familiar with that theater program up there, so I'm curious to hear what they've got going on. Also, upcoming reviews to look out for include Eureka Day at Curious, the Buddy Holly Story at Town Hall, The Thin Place at Boulder Ensemble Theatre Company, and Merrily We Roll Along at Vintage, all handled by Mr. Toni Tresca. So you're going to be busy seeing shows and writing them up this weekend.
That's right. I've got myself a 4-show weekend.
All right.
Well, if you want to stay up to date on all that's going on in the theaters across the state, you can subscribe to the OnStage Colorado Theater Blast for more information. That comes out pretty much every Thursday. And you can rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast so that it comes straight to your feed every week or so.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Matt and Libby Zambrano for coming on. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca. And we'll see you at the show.